Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Gordon Telfer. That hasn't changed, and neither has the identity of today's guest. I would like to welcome onto the show my close associate, Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Jake Runyon and Chase Kaminsky of the Terrace get together? That's right, we are going to enter the Lake Erie Walleye Trail Fishing Tournament. We're going to win big in very suspicious circumstances, and then we're going to watch on in horror as the judges cut open our winning hauls to find weights inside the fish and reveal that we have actually cheated. And while we're waiting for a police escort to take us away safely from the area, away from all those other angry anglers who have been diddled, we're going to have a little chat about some lower league Scottish football.
How on earth did they manage to smuggle weights inside the fish with no one managing to catch them? I know ultimately they did get caught, but
that's a good question. You know something, Shaughan, when in the fast-moving world of podcasts, sometimes you don't have a chance to worry about the how or the why. Just, can we get names of two people that have done something bad? Can we apply it to ourselves? If the answer to that is yes, then anything else can fall by the wayside. They do have their own Wikipedia page, the pair of them, though, so do check it out.
Fair play. Have they made a comeback, or have they been disqualified forever? Do you know?
Oh, I think they've been disqualified forever. Would you want to go fishing with someone put weights in their catch?
I mean, no, but I suppose everybody deserves a second chance, don't they?
I'd like to go out fishing with them to find out how they got weights inside the fish and then were able to catch them. I think that's quite an interesting concept.
I suppose you could just find out without going fishing with them, unless you are desperate to go fishing.
And the likely event that Jake Runyon and Chase Kaminsky are listening to this podcast, do get in touch with myself and Shaughan and do let us know how you put weights in the fish. We probably can't afford to go to Lake Erie. I don't think we've got the time, the means to get there. So please just get in touch with us electronically. That would be fantastic. But listen, we're not here to talk about cheating. We're not here to talk about fishing. We are here to talk about lower league Scottish football. There's a lot to get through on this episode. We had originally intended to produce one of our patented 3-game podcasts looking at games from the Championship, League 1 and League 2, but we now have to discuss the 2 midweek fixtures in the Championships, a managerial departure and a points deduction as well. So before we get going, Shaughan, just check in with you and how you're doing.
I'm very well. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you. Good. The good news is my bathtub has been fixed.
Oh, thank God.
For the low cost of £282, that's including VAT. I got a very burly Welshman to come and basically put all this enamel beneath my bathtub. But because it's still a wee bit shaky, I am standing in the shower as if I'm about to take part in Duel on Gladiators. You know, I've completely balanced my legs out. I've completely spread my weight. And I'm approaching it very cautiously.
But wait a minute, when did they... So we're recording this on the Wednesday evening. When did they come round to fix it?
Thursday afternoon.
So it's now been a week and you're still slightly concerned?
Still like the bathtub's got a lump in it now, and I'm just very cautious. The guy took one look at it and he was very confused. As that he said, "This is... I'm not sure how I'm going to fix this," but I said, "Listen, just make sure that there's no crack in it, and that'll do us fine."
I'm starting to get the suspicion that, bearing in mind it's now been a week and you're still concerned about your bath. I see when you said that the burly Welshman took one look at it. I think he took one look at it and thought, how could I rip this guy off? It should really be totally sturdy by a weekend.
It's funny, I asked him what the problem was and he said cowboys. So I think when a new manager comes into a football team and says the players aren't fit enough, it's it's nothing to do with me. I think that's his way of saying, yes, your problems with the bath were long before I ever got here. But nevertheless, I've had this bathtub I've had the same bathroom since I moved into the flat. I think that in time it might need a bit of sprucing up, so that's something to think about.
Well, fingers crossed it becomes sturdier soon.
One of the other things to say is, when you and I talk in these podcasts, I just think it's like you and I just chatting shite and then it goes off somewhere and other people listen to it. It's strange when you get confronted with it in real life. I was at a wedding with my girlfriend on Friday, and one of my girlfriend's friend's husbands, we've mentioned him in the podcast before, Graham Tate. Hello, Graham. Hope you're listening to this. He asked me, "How's your bathtub getting on?" and my girlfriend looked at me and I said, how does he know about that? And I said, I must have mentioned it, Tim. I must have mentioned it on the podcast. So it's just, you sometimes need to learn that sometimes real life can bleed out into the internet and vice versa. So that's something I am going to remember. So this is the last time I ever share any personal information about my bathtub or anything else.
I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think it's a massive negative. A guy just asking how's your bathtub? Is everything okay?
Yeah, I suppose, but then
it could have been worse. It could have been worse.
It could have been worse. I'm thinking what's worse than a bathtub? A broken toilet. That would have been a lot worse.
I remember I once broke up my bath. It was my last. I've had my bathroom done up since then, but it was not too long after I moved in, and I was sitting in the bath, and I was very aware that because there's like a kind of shower door, and I was very aware that it was slightly loose.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in the bath, I think I was getting ready to get out, and I kind of moved the door slightly, but it actually just came off. It came off its hinge, and it fell into the bath, but then punctured it below the water line. So I then have to try and I had to like kind of put my fingers in the hole so that I didn't flood my downstairs neighbour while taking out the plug to try and drain the water quickly. Bear in mind,
you're naked at this point.
I'm completely naked. It wasn't a great moment. It was at that point I realised I needed a new bathroom.
Sort of like a blue version of Mr. Bean. You know, I mean, would Mr. Bean have benefited if Rowan Atkinson, you know that episode where he's got the couch on top of his car and he's steering it? If you could see Rowan Atkinson's cock, would that have improved the product? I don't know. I have my doubts.
Oh dear.
But nevertheless, I keep saying nevertheless, we'll start, Shaughan, by looking at our featured game in the Championship, and I think we'll perhaps just try and get everything in a reasonable time. We can talk about this in sort of general details, but we'll start our featured match. It is perhaps one of the most surprising results, not necessarily a shock, but certainly a surprise. It was Arbroath 3-1 win over St Johnstone at Gayfield. Josh McPake put the visitors ahead after just 5 minutes. But a 3-goal blitz in 11 second half minutes saw the Lichties prevail. Finlay Marshall got 2 of them, Gavin Riley got the other, and Arbroath got an absolutely enormous 3 points. Arbroath, they're in third place with 18 points, but St Johnstone's unbeaten start to the season has come to an end. They're still top of the table, however, with 24 points. And I don't know about you, Shaughan, but I suppose we'll talk about this from a St Johnstone perspective. First of all, it felt as though this was a result that had been coming. I think when you look at recent performances and recent results, the trend had been quite negative. I think if you look at the games against Queen's Park, Airdrieonians, they sneaked past them in both games. Then there was the draws against Ayr United and Ross County. Didn't play very well in either of those games. And then you get a defeat to Arbroath here.
Yeah, you're right. It felt like it's been coming. I suppose why I maybe felt like such a surprise, I think it's one of the more kind of standout performances of the season so far, is that I think a lot was said about the fact that in the last couple of games St Johnstone have been coming up against sides that kind of dug in against them, that played quite defensively, and so St Johnstone struggled to break them down. That's absolutely not what Arbroath done on this occasion. They got so many players forward. There wasn't extensive highlights, whether it was 7.5, 8 minutes, but certainly the chances that Arbroath created, the amount of times where they just had 4, 5 players kind of prominently positioned when they were advancing, and it was this wasn't as much as they had to come from behind. This wasn't a fluky result by any stretch of imagination. Arbroath were far and away the better team, and I suppose it suggests that St Johnstone maybe are there for the taking. That's easier said than done. I suppose Dunfermline done something similar at McDermott Park, whatever it was, 5 or 6 weeks ago. Like, they were unlucky not to take something on the night. They certainly went for it that night. But I thought Arbroath looked excellent, and I suppose something to think about for Valakari and St Johnstone.
I think the issues in this game were 2 of the 3 goals came from goalkeeping errors. I think Toby Stewart, the last time we'd spoken about him was after that Dunfermline Athletic game, and we praised him for effectively winning the match with the saves that he made right at the death. Here, however, very slow to get down to Finlay Marshall's shot for the equaliser.
Yep.
And then it was a really, really great piece of attacking play from Arbroath to win the ball back so deep inside their own half and pounce forward with it. Great bit of play. But Marshall's cross should have been saved, but he spills it right in the path for Gavin Riley to finish. So that's the unfortunate thing. And on top of that as well, the timing of the goals came like bang, bang, one after the other. And by the time you get yourself together, Marshall's got a third goal. And that was actually just a very well finished goal rather than anything else. And what I found interesting about this was Simo Valakari's post-match interview. And I thought this was fantastic. I think this is one of the best post-match interviews we've heard this season. We talk about Michael McIndoe a lot of the time. There's your first mention of Michael McIndoe in this podcast, but we talk about Michael McIndoe a lot and how inspiring his interviews are and how they can rouse you even if you're not an Edinburgh City fan. I found that listening to Valakari with his post-match interview where he talked about this is perhaps the biggest challenge that St Johnstone have faced this season. They have faced many challenges over the course of the campaign and been able to rise to them. Mm-hmm. But this is the first time where it's been very difficult for them. And he used a great term, football has a short memory. So nobody will really care the fact that you got a 7-point lead at the top of the table just a couple of weeks ago. They'll care how you respond to this game. And it'll be interesting to see how they respond against Greenock Morton on Saturday.
Yeah, totally. You're right. I enjoy listening to him as well. And I think other managers, or you've heard managers in the past, they'll play down a defeat or they will offer up excuses. I mean, we hear that every week. He didn't do that. He actually said something like, I can't remember the exact line, but something like, I can stand here and say everything will be fine, but it won't necessarily all be fine. And it's how we react to this. Something along those lines. But you're right, it is really, really good to listen to. He generally talks up the opponent. And where necessary.
That was the first thing he said.
Yeah.
The first thing he said was very positive about Arbroath.
And where necessary, he will kind of criticise himself or not necessarily criticise his players in terms of chucking them under the bus, but he's happy to discuss where a performance might have went wrong. So you're right, I enjoy listening to him, and I thought he came across pretty well in the defeat, which you can't always say when you listen to a manager.
I think the worry about this, though, I watched Jason Holt's post-match interview as well. It was on the St Johnstone Twitter page, just right next to Valakari's interview, so it was easy to listen to one after the other. First thing, those St Johnstone bomber jackets are absolutely dynamite. Brilliant. They are a really, really nice piece of kit. Really nice piece of kit. They're probably the best dressed team in the country. But what I did find quite alarming was that Holt talked about how the team dropped out of the game after the third goal. And I know that the goals came, we mentioned there, 3 goals in the space of 11 minutes, and that must have a demoralising effect, even if you are the team that's top of the table. But it's just going by the highlights, and yes, they were only 7 minutes long. From that point on, it didn't look like St Johnstone created very much. If you're going to go by the highlights, the only times that Aidan McAdams was called into action was to claim cross balls, and he did it very well. You know what's great that way when you're holding on for a win and your goalkeeper will come out for a cross ball and then just fall down and sort of fall onto his knees and then fall onto his stomach holding the ball. And it's like, you're like, yes, you're celebrating it like you've won a corner of your own because it just killed time. But that's all McAdams was really called upon. And it's how that Valakari can reinvigorate these players. I think Josh McPake scored a very good goal to open the game. He's been off the boil a wee bit. Uche Piazza didn't get a particularly good write-up. He had a good chance early on in the second half at 1-0. He did great work to come inside and just shot past the post. Outside of that, though, I think can be quite static up top. And I think that if the ball's not played perfectly into his feet, he can sometimes just not have much of an impact in the game. I think this was one of those games. So it's what Valakari does out of this game. That'll be fascinating because Morton were the first side to take points off them in the division. I think on any other day, St Johnstone might have won that. Yeah. Morton had to dug deep. They got a bit of luck, scored a fantastic goal through Eamon Brophy, a long distance hit. But this is the challenge now, is to bounce back from that. Valakari said he doesn't believe in a bad day at the office, and you just have to work hard to make sure this doesn't happen again. I mean, I suppose when Adama Sidibe comes back, that makes a difference. So you're right. I think Jamie Gullen led the line initially in the first half. Kai Fotheringham went off at the interval. Don't think he kind of had a particularly positive day at the office. I think when Uche Ikpiazzo comes on,
It's interesting. I think St Johnstone fans like him as an impact substitute, but as long as it's quite late in the game, I think the earlier he's introduced, the more they worry, because he can't hold the ball up. He's probably, from a technical point of view, I don't think he's a particularly good player, and I didn't look at a very good second half. So I think we mentioned it last time around as well. Just in terms of going forward, I think if you can nullify McPake, you'll probably do okay against St Johnstone, and it feels like teams have kind of worked that out. So now ultimately, Valakari needs to come up with a plan B, and I suspect he will. But aye, they're not in a great run of form. But on the plus side, I suppose, not that you want to hear that from a St Johnstone perspective, bear in mind, whatever it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we wondered if anybody could challenge them, and we doubted that. But now at least it feels like it's opened up the division again, which is from a non-St Johnstone point of view, very much a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll come on to that challenger very shortly. But just one more thing to say about St Johnstone. Josh McPake's knee slide after opening the scoring, wretched. Absolutely wretched. Did not anticipate that there was absolutely no grease at all on the Gayfield surface, and basically just landed smack bang in his face.
And he wasn't even really able to kind of style it out. You know how sometimes like you'll see somebody doing a poor knee slide, maybe that stops short, and they might be able to go into some kind of roll, not necessarily a forward roll, but some kind of stylish roll. That wasn't that at all.
No, but we'll talk about Arbroath's performance, and I think that we'll start off maybe on a bit of a negative. That was Tam O'Brien made the mistake there to give the goal. I think he tries to dribble out of defence, and he gets his pocket picked by Rhys McAleer, and then defence is wide open. McAleer wins the ball, plays it to McPake, and he's allowed straight through and goal to finish. That's the second time in as many games we've seen an error from Tam O'Brien. And Tam O'Brien, yes, widely acknowledged to be one of the best part-time players in the country, being an absolutely superb player for Arbroath. But there's the two mistakes. It ultimately didn't cost them, and neither did the mistake last week. A 4-1 win over Queen's Park last time out, a 3-1 win over St Johnstone here, but just quite uncharacteristic. And his manager's explaining it away. I think last week Colin Hamilton had said, they must do it turnabout, the post-match interviews, Colin Hamilton and David Gold. But Colin Hamilton had said that, it was the ball was into an auto position. Tam O'Brien, if he makes contact, the guy could concede a penalty, could be red carded for it. And this one here, David Gold saying, it's a mistake, but Tam didn't let it affect his game, grew into the match, and ultimately led his team to a 3-1 win. But it's just an interesting observation that someone of that quality has made mistakes in consecutive games.
Yeah, and David Gold was still very complimentary.
Of course, yeah.
About, as you would expect him to be. He was very complimentary about his performance in general. But aye, you're right. I noticed that as well, in terms of that there are maybe a few mistakes starting to creep into his game, and I suppose decisive errors as well. I must admit, I've not checked his age. I'm not entirely sure how old he'll be now.
33, 34?
33 maybe. But aye, maybe we are now starting to see the twilight end of his career at Arbroath.
34.
Right, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
But you're right, I noticed that as well. But David Gold was very quick to stick up for him post-match.
What I really liked about Arbroath's performance as well, we talked about the first goal. Good ball in from Gavin Riley, good finish from Marshall, but I think Stewart looks and just didn't get down quick enough for it. The second goal, however, I think this is Arbroath at their best. The second goal, because St Johnstone are trying to attack up the park. They're trying to carry it down the left flank. I think it's Harry Cochrane wins the ball back. And all of a sudden, they're bounding down on the attack, and Marshall's got the ball to play it in. Yes, goalkeeping mistake, but the fact that Riley's there to mop up and finish, I think that just sums up the stuff that Arbroath are good at. They've got dig, they've got drive, enthusiasm. They can win the ball back, they can turn it over, pace out wide, and good players in attack. Yeah, I really enjoy watching Arbroath. It's not that they don't play good football. I do think they're a decent footballing team. But even when they go direct, there's a purpose about it, and they just flood forward. So you're right. As soon as there was the kind of turnover in the middle of the park, there's just 4 or 5 players desperate to get forward to support the attack. Really good to watch. I enjoyed it. My favourite thing, though, about this whole match, it was, well, in fact, not so much about the match, it was David Gold's post-match interview when the interviewer asked him about Finlay Marshall and he just breaks out into this big smile. It just seemed like he described him as a special player, someone who the club are lucky to have, and someone who's like a really humble guy and can only get better if he, keeps his feet in the ground, listen to his coaches. But there, having seen him in the flesh last week in that match against Queen's Park, and having seen him here, 2 goals and a kind of assist out. You won't get it because Stewart fumbled the ball. Just a really good player who seems to be getting better. He was good last season. I remember seeing him at Cove Rangers, being really impressed by him. But someone who just seems to be getting better and better. And if this trajectory continues, you could imagine him playing his way back into full-time football very soon.
Yeah, totally. I think that's maybe 5 goals in 5 games or 6 and 6, something like that. But you're right, David Gold was, you're right, he was beaming when he was asked about him, and he kind of gave quite a full answer when he was asked about him, and it sounds like that that both he and Colin Hamilton probably spent a lot of time working with Finlay Marshall, and it sounds like he as a player is very receptive to what they're telling him. So that was quite a good moment in the interview.
Yeah, he's only 19 as well, so there's plenty of opportunity for him to grow. You're absolutely right, Shaughan. It's 5 goals in his last 5 matches, so he's definitely one to watch. Is there anything else to be said about this match at all?
I think it was described as a statement in the interview after the game for David Gold. Probably was. I think I was maybe quite quick to dismiss Arbroath in terms of they had a kind of maybe 4 games without a win, and I thought they might not necessarily plummet down the league, but I thought they'd maybe go to 5th, 6th, 7th, something that you would normally expect of Arbroath at the start of the season. But actually on Saturday they looked absolutely excellent. So maybe they are another team that will be in the playoff equation this season. I certainly hadn't considered in the summer.
And they've got a very presentable fixture up against Airdrieonians. Well, I suppose this is the perfect time to just move on and talk about Airdrie. In fact, first, we'll talk about this. Sorry, I was all getting muddled there. Don't say we'll talk about this and then change your mind. Airdrieonians, of course, we'll talk about their match against Dunfermline just shortly, but Airdrieonians, this is a very, very presentable tie for Arbroath. Airdrieonians, of course, lost 4-0 to Dunfermline Athletic on Tuesday night, and the day later, Danny Lennon was sacked as manager. Probably the shortest statement I've ever seen to accompany a managerial departure. Airdrieonians SC confirms that it's parted company with manager Danny Lennon. We are grateful to Danny for his efforts during his time at the club. 8 games, 2 draws, 6 defeats. Not great. Airdrie looking for their 3rd manager of the season, and it's not even November.
I mean, I'm not surprised in the slightest. I thought it was an odd appointment. I mean, let's face it, everybody did, and I don't think anybody has been impressed whatsoever by his tenure, short as it was. There was some suggestions, whether it was true or not, in the last kind of week or so, that he was on a kind of rolling contract, which I suppose made it slightly easier to dispense with the services if it wasn't going well. And I watched about an hour of the game last night. Didn't watch all of it, but I have watched the highlights back. And as much as, see, like maybe the first half hour or so, I thought Airdrie were okay to a point. I thought they had a lot of possession. I thought they got the ball out wide. They occasionally kind of fizzed it into the kind of middle of the park. But see, at no point did I think they're about to create a chance here. They're about to fashion a shot at goal, and ultimately that's how the entire game played out. And when Dunfermline fashioned a chance, because ultimately that first goal was probably the first chance in the game, and then the second goal was probably just the second chance in the game, and that was the difference. Dunfermline were able to create chances when they were in possession, and Airdrie just kind of played it around for almost like for possession's sake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was keeping up to date with the score, and the longer it went on into the first half, I was thinking, well, fair play to Airdrie. That's how I imagined the game was going. I thought, fair play to Airdrie, they must keep them at bay. As soon as that first goal went in, I thought, well, that's it. You can't really see Airdrie scoring. And then when the second goal went in almost immediately after, it was game over, because you couldn't see them coming back in. And it just, I said it before, I really like Danny Lennon, but just the wrong man at the wrong time for that role. Apparently the best candidate, which it might have been the only candidate that was interested in taking on that role. And I think Airdrie are in a really, really bad position. They're not quite adrift at the foot of the table. I think that Queen's Park, they're capable of reeling them. There's only 5 points between them, so with a bit of luck, they can bring the Spiders into trouble at the foot of the table. But it all goes back. You said it before. It all goes back to that not being able to build on finishing 4th place in the championship. Yeah. And it feels like all that good work from that season has been undone. And it's difficult to see, maybe not necessarily finishing bottom, but it's very difficult to see them extricating themselves from at least anything to do with relegation this season.
It's funny because as much as it's essentially impossible to come up with a defence for Danny Lennon to continue in the position, I'm also not entirely sure I believe anybody else will come in and necessarily do any better. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I just think that in terms of the squad that they have, the fact they don't have a striker, the fact that the rest of the team, it's not as if they have an excellent midfield and a great back four or a brilliant goalkeeper. It's not as if there's other elements of that squad that allows them to do anything really. It's not just as if the not having a striker is the only thing that's wrong with that squad. There is so many things that's wrong with it. So whoever comes in to replace Lennon, I think they have their work cut out, and I would be very, very surprised if they can do anything particularly positive with that squad. If they can remain in the mix until January, if there's funds there, I don't know, to bring bodies in, but goodness me, I suppose they done it last season, like brought in Alex Bannon, for example. Like they had quite a good January transfer window last time. I think that's when Strap came in as well. Yep. If they can do something similar and stay close to Queen's Park, then fair enough, they've got a chance. But that squad is very much a League One looking squad.
So what are you saying? Airdrieonians versus Arbroath, how are we calling it?
I think Arbroath will win this.
Yeah, I think so too. And Greenock Morton versus St Johnstone.
I mean, Morton drawing every week has been bust. So I think it'll be a poor game. St Johnstone to win 1-0.
I think you're right. St Johnstone get back on level terms, and we'd wondered about Greenock Morton's form. If you draw your games, it feels like you can go either ways. You can maybe start winning games, you can start losing. I worry it might be the latter of the two, and they might start losing and slipping down the table. But I suppose we've got another couple of weeks until the second third of the season really kicks in, and everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. That the Morton hump, rubbish, good, and rubbish again. That's fine. We know, you know how it works, Morton fans listening. You know how it works. And Shaughan, this leads us nicely in to talk about the second of the 2 midweek games. Partick Thistle 2, Ayr United 1. A really quite an entertaining game at Firhill on Tuesday night. Ethan Walker put Ayr United ahead right before half-time with a well-worked goal, but it was cancelled out immediately after the restart. Solana Litsosa scored about 40 seconds after the restart before Ben Stanway took advantage of some horrendous defending to put the team up 4 minutes later. Walker was later sent off for a second yellow card, and Thistle had a wee bit nervy moments at the end, but ultimately a deserved win for them. I was there at that game. I paid my £24 to go. So Shaughan, feel free to ask me anything you like about Partick Thistle 2, Ayr United 1.
Now, I've not managed to see any highlights for this game yet. I don't think there was any up just before this podcast started. So, very much have to hand this over to you, but it sounded like that Thistle were worthy winners.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought the first half was absorbing without much happening in it, if you know what I mean. I can't really remember David Mitchell having much to do. I can't remember Josh Clark having much to do in that game. And the only thing that really livened up was Ethan Walker's goal. Prior to that, however, like as in 60 seconds prior to that, Lee Ashcroft picked up an injury that required him to leave the field and basically be replaced. And Luke Macbeth came on in his place and had to partner Dan O'Reilly at centre-back. And I don't know if that defensive disruption cost Thistle the first goal, because it's a really nice ball and Jamie Murphy slides in a great pass. You could almost see the goal happening before it hit the back of the net, if you know what I mean. Walker made a really good run between the two centre-backs, took the ball in and could have shot first time, but brought it back onto his left foot and finished. Really, really nice goal. So you're thinking, how are Partick Thistle going to respond to this? And my goodness, what a way to do it. Probably bad defending from Ayr United in two instances. Logan Chalmers picked up the ball down the left-hand side, put it through the legs of Leon King, or certainly beat him quite easily to get to the byline, and chucked a ball to the sort of 8 yards from goal. And Litsosa pretty much runs onto it unmarked. And I don't know how you'd let somebody like a midfielder run from deep to score. Probably put it on their part. 1-1, game on, brilliant. And then I can't remember who it was, but an United centre-back dithers with the ball inside the penalty box. Stanway takes it off him, opens up his body and curls a great shot into the net. And from that point on, Thistle were really quite comfortable. Couldn't really see Ayr United coming back into it. They hadn't really shown all that much. Brown tried changing things up, maybe taking off one attacking player for another and so on. Ethan Walker was sent off. I think he'd gone off with an injury. Tried to come back onto the pitch, but got on the field early before the referee signalled him, and that's a booking, and then was sent off for that. I didn't even realise till some people started singing "Cheerio, Cheerio," and then it was straight on to Twitter to go on the Ayr and Thistle accounts to see exactly what had happened. But then I actually think that Wilson's substitutes weakened Thistle. They took off Chalmers and Litsosa. We'll talk about them more in detail, but they were the two best players in the patch. They took the pair of them off. And I remember thinking, you don't need to do this. You're not in a position where you want to be removing guys that are having a really good game. Neither of them looked like they were flagging. They still looked like they had something to contribute. And one of the players that came on was Kyle Turner. And Turner, I don't think, had a particularly good game. There was a bit where Turner... I don't think Turner had come on for Litsosa. I'd need to check the exact substitutes here. I came on for Ben Stanway, but he came on 72 minutes, didn't really do anything positive with the ball, and he gave the ball away unnecessarily. Sort of was a bit casual, sort of fell under it, and Ayr were bounding forward, and you could tell the Thistle fans around me were quite nervy and just wanted the game to be over. But despite the fact that they almost played their way into trouble, Ayr couldn't do anything with the ball, and it finished deserved victory for Thistle, who have moved level at top of the table with St Johnstone.
I suppose it was billed as two potential title challengers. Did either of them look like that might be the case? Presumably one, because Thistle got their 3 points.
Thistle do. I've got to say, Mark Wilson is cooking something very nicely. Mark Wilson is cooking something very nicely at Firhill at the moment. The two best players in the park, Logan Chalmers. It was at the stage where about midway through the first, I was like, please just go and give Logan Chalmers the ball. Please just go and give him the ball, because he's the one that's really making something happen. And I know he can be flaky, and sometimes his decision making or his final ball can be a wee bit poor. But he's a couple of great runs down the left hand side. He had one where he absolutely took the drawers off. Who's playing left back for? I can't. That's bizarre. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to check. It was Scott McMahon. That's it. He took the drawers off Scott McMahon and sprinted down the wing. And really exciting player. But Litsosa, we'd spoken about him on the preview podcast when he spoke about that interview that he gave the club's social media accounts, and thinking he's so bright and he's so positive and he's such a big personality. He plays football like the way he was being interviewed. What a joy to watch. So energetic. And there was points I was like, this is great. This is the first time I get to watch this guy in the flesh. And so parts of the match I was just focusing on him. So energetic. He would get the ball and it's just an automatic thing. He's looking to move into space. He's just looking to move in space where he can make it easier for the person who's just got the ball to give him an option. And it's nothing too fancy, nothing too outrageous, but the weight of the pass, the range of passing, all very impressive. His ability to get around the pitch was great as well. He's got a lot of dig in him, and he capped off that performance by getting his team back into the game. He got man of the match. I actually thought Chalmers was the better of the two players, but I'm not going to quibble too much on that. Just a really, really good player. And I think that across the board from Thistle, maybe I've got issues about the centre forward. They had Alex Samuel on at the start. Don't think he really contributed much. I don't know, do you ever see the programme Lunatics on Netflix, the Chris Lilly show?
No.
There's these, it's not very good, but there's these estate agents who've all got, there's about 5 brothers who've all got floppy blonde hair and big arses. And Alex Samuel would look could have come from that section of lunatics. Tony Watt came on for him at half time, and Watt had a couple of nice touches, but a lot of the time, this is really hard to explain. He looked like someone who'd played at a much higher level that was very much winding down his career and had dropped down a significant level that he could feel like he could do what he wanted. A significant level for him that he could do what he wanted. He kept on trying to come deep all the time, and he just a wee bit casual with what he was trying to do. And I just thought, go and just stay up front.
I suppose that it kind of feels like that's always what Tony Watt has been like. That I think you'll maybe have like 10 games where he's absolutely amazing, 10 games where he's absolutely fine, and then the rest you might not notice him. I suppose the benefit that he brings to Partick Thistle in terms of if he was the replacement for Brian Graham, is he can he play anywhere across the kind of forward line, whereas Graham was very much I need to play up front and I will play every single minute. So it feels like he has been, you're right, I don't think he'll always have a good game for Partick Thistle, but I do think he will be a kind of, he's ultimately a net positive for the team.
I think so. It was just annoying me that he was like somebody who's really good at football, that's playing at a level they don't feel they should be playing at, and so isn't quite taking it as seriously. I don't need a position, I'll just do what I want, and just kept on dropping deep. And it's like, if you're going to come into those areas, be harder with your passing, be a bit firmer with your touch. That was perhaps the only negatives I had from a Thistle perspective. But they were really good. And I think that, off the back of that win against Ross County at the weekend, where I think it was quite a hard fought win. They weren't necessarily the most fluent or prettiest. Did score a fantastic goal through Oisin Smith, a really nice, pretty much it started down in the corner flag down at the John Lambie stand and worked its way all the forward to the Bing where they scored. Really nice goal. But as for Ayr United, I thought they were coming into this game in really good form, and I thought that Scott Brown had put it felt like the nadir of his time so far this season was when they were beaten 2-0 by Thistle in the League Cup. They were really shit that day. And this one, I know they went down to 10 men, but they just, even other than that goal, they just didn't really do anything too inspiring. And I suppose that's the disappointment. There's a lot of good players in that team, but I just felt they were beaten by a more effervescent side, I suppose.
It kind of feels like, I know Ayr fans have mentioned it in the aftermath, it feels like any time Ayr go into a big game, they generally don't get a positive result. They're starting to question, I suppose, Scott Brown in terms of his record in these big games, and then certainly in terms of his starting 11. I think the fact that Dylan Watcher has had quite a good season, it feels like he's bounced back pretty well this season, but he was dropped for Nick McAllister. So that didn't seem to be a decision that worked out well. And it just always seems to be something you can point to in these big games for Ayr United when it doesn't go well, and you look at Scott Brown and say, I'm not entirely sure why you've done that, and it's not worked.
Can't blame David Mitchell for either of the goals, though. He's raging about that. He was he was desperate for a goalkeeper mistake so he could dig him out. But no, David Mitchell just didn't have much to do beyond picking the ball out of the back of his net twice. But an absorbing game, and really impressed by Thistle. And one of the things that just the experience of going, it's the stuff I like about opposition grounds. When we talk about Albion Rovers and going to Clifton Hill, when you pay your money through the gates and you turn left at the turnstiles and you walk up the steps to where the pitch sort of just opens up in front of you. Love that. At Fir Hill, it's like you go down the side where the Bing is and up round towards the Jackie Husband stand. Love that. And you can walk past, there's a wee bit where you can look through the fencing at the pitch. It's great. Love it. And when the players scored, opening goal for Partick Thistle, scored by Solano. Let's Sosa! Solano, let's Sosa! And all the fans are doing it. I know it's a bit of like a cringy thing from Germany or from Italy, but the fans really want it. Ben Stanley! And at the end, for the song we sing, to the tune of Tequila's, Let's Sosa! And just at the end, I was able to leave the ground, walk all the way around the stand up to where my car was parked in Morano Street, and they were still playing Tequila. They must have just had it on loop for the entire 10 minutes at the full-time whistle. But it's great. There was about 3,000 odd people there. I think they would have all enjoyed themselves. So it's great. Hopefully I get the chance to to go to Firhill again. It's a ground I like going to watch football in. I
think I've mentioned this before, but see during COVID, we went to, it was Partick Thistle versus, I think they were playing Peterhead. It would have been League One. Excuse me. And you know how you can kind of watch it from the path next to the, whatever it is, the river?
Yeah.
So there was like maybe 30 people watching it. And we were there watching it. You can only see like maybe 50% of the pitch or whatever. But it's during COVID, very much better than nothing. And at half time, Partick Thistle brought a load of pies out.
Oh, super.
So the big, massive box, just to essentially say thank you for turning up, even though we were a good bit away from the stadium. But no, I've got a wee soft spot for Thistle, so I'm glad they're doing well. And bearing in mind, I don't think anybody had necessarily thought that Wilson was a good appointment, bearing in mind his struggles at his last two clubs. So he's very much performing better than I thought he might.
It's quite interesting, just on that, not to keep talking about this match, but I was in the ground about half an hour before kick-off. I quite like being in the grounds. I've said that before. I like being in the grounds early. I like watching the teams warming up. And I was watching Thistle warm up. You know, they take the starting 11 and they do like box where I think they take the two centre-backs and they play them at either end and, you know, they work the ball through to try and keep possession. I was watching Mark Wilson during that, and Wilson was very much involved. I think he was actually standing with like paper or a whistle around his neck and was dictating what the players were doing. And I compared that to, I looked over what Scott Brown was doing. Scott Brown was sort of standing quite detached and quite distant from it. And not that makes a difference. I'm sure Scott Brown's got the coaches there that can do it for him. But just in terms of managerial styles, I mean, Wilson is the head coach ultimately, so it's his job to be the head of the coaches. That's a fucking stupid thing to say. But I suppose that's his forte. It's more about coaching and you know, getting the tracksuit on and getting out and working with the players. And I don't know if Brown's style is a bit more, I don't like using this term, but more statesman-like in that regard, and where you've got the respect to the players there and you get your coaches to do all the training for you.
Remember the interview with, I don't know if it was the Partick Thistle chairman, and they talked about when Graham was essentially, Brian Graham was essentially moved on, and they said he said something like he was like that kind of alpha.
Yeah.
That was quite interesting. So maybe he's similar more to Scott Brown, whereas Mark Wilson is more hands-on. Regardless, whatever it is, it's certainly working.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy it. Now, Shaughan, before we look at our League One featured match, we really have to talk about the breaking news. It just dropped a couple of hours ago. Hamilton Academical have been deducted 6 points and fined £22,000 after breaching multiple SPFL rules found by an independent SPFL disciplinary tribunal. The hearing took place on the 10th of October 2025, and they were in breach of a number of rules while under a transfer embargo, including making payments to players who are registered as amateur players for the club, making payments to players who have appeared as trialists for the club, breach of the club's duty to behave with the utmost good faith towards the SPFL and other clubs regarding its paying of trialists and amateur players, abuse of the registration system by attempting to register professional players as amateur players, and failing to keep records and documentation under the SPFL rules. Shaughan, not to act smart after the fact, I think that everyone, you and I and every single person, as soon as Hamilton Accies signed 3 amateur players, we all said, well, we're laughing, but we all said the same thing. Said the same thing. I bet something's going to happen further down the line. And that's sure enough, here we are.
It feels like we've been predicting this since about August or September. It feels like they've broken a lot of rules. I will say that. And if there is any kind of silver lining to this, I appreciate a 6 point deduction. Difficult to look at a silver lining. I think they've got off quite lightly. I think bearing in mind they're well known for not behaving themselves, and yet again they've not behaved themselves, and I'm surprised it's only 6 points. And I know it's not a like for like comparison, but if you look at what Hamilton appeared to be guilty of, looking at the kind of the stuff that they've been found guilty of compared to Edinburgh City, for example, who didn't pay a £5,000 bill or whatever it was, I think -6 is, I think they've done okay there. I genuinely do.
been invited onto the BBC Sports Scotland Daily Football podcast, and we talk about Hamilton occasionally, and every time we've discussed them, I've always had to caveat it by saying, yeah, you know, Ollie Shaw scored a good goal, Kevin O'Hara put a good cross in, but something bad's coming down the tracks. and here it is, you're right, 6 points. I mean, it's comparing apples and oranges with saying what Edinburgh did,
yeah.
and all that, you know, that's a fine. So I do think that for Edinburgh, like 15 points seemed really harsh, although what the level of that liquidator appointment, just a very sliding scale for that. And but anyway, in terms of Hamilton, as soon as these guys came in, I thought, I wonder if they're getting paid out a business that's connected to the club. Somebody involved with the club will be paying these guys money, and so it's proved. And I think this, on top of last season, the failing to pay the players, or sort of trying to circumvent that transfer embargo and being really shady about it. And then what was the charge there, where the breach of the club's duty to behave in the utmost good faith towards the SPFL and other clubs. That's twice they've done that. And you've got to say, what on earth is Jerry Strain, the director of football, doing? Who do you think you are by behaving this way towards the governing body and to other clubs? Effectively trying to cheat, because that's what it is. That's what this is. It's cheating. You're not playing by the rules. We knew when these amateur players came in that something was afoot. When they started playing trialists in some of the games, I think Charlie Telfer is one of the trialists, obviously now at Airdrieonians, that there was some shenanigans that he was being paid by the club when appearing as a trialist. It's just not on. I feel sorry for the Hamilton supporters, but I don't feel sorry for the people involved in the club. That's in, what's the space of like 4 or 5 months, 21 points have been deducted for trying to break the rules revolving player transfers. It's not on, man. Not on.
And the thing is, I would be surprised if there isn't more to come. But like without knowing anything whatsoever, I would be surprised if like I think we all knew they were going to get a points deduction at some point. So now they have it. Do I think they're going to go between now and May without getting some other kind of sanctions against them? I would be astonished. That's today hasn't been great. I think they've maybe got away with one to a degree, but again, I still think there's probably something coming down the tracks at some point that will derail them, even if they are doing well in the park. And that's the thing. Like, see the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks, actually have been excellent on the park.
Yeah, it's been a really good result. I mean, they were deducted, the SPFL withheld prize money from them. Am I right in saying it was something like £70,000 because they were worried about the club's ability to fulfil its fixtures? Am I right in saying that?
That's right, yeah.
And I've always been impressed this season by John Rankin's ability to just focus on what's happening on the pitch and just concentrate on matters, because that was they beat Stennismuir 2-0, followed that by beating Inverness Caledonian Thistle 3-1, and then a really good 4-0 win over Montrose at the weekend there to take them top of the table. They're no longer top of the table anymore after the Wednesday afternoon's ruling. So he's done very well to keep that spot. I don't know how long you can keep that going for. The place just be totally demoralised. And it's in the KDM Evolution Trophy. Like, what you playing these guys in there for? It's you could win these games without them.
I think if you remember, again, I think we discussed it at the time, but Rankin done a really good interview where he discussed the fact that he'd essentially picked a team.
That's right, I remember.
There was young players involved, and then like maybe half an hour before kickoff, with the team literally warming up, he had to go out in the park and say, listen, I'm really sorry, you're not going to be able to play. And then he's essentially changing his team literally half an hour before kickoff. And at that point, I actually wondered if he would maybe chuck it, because you could tell that he had quite clearly had enough. But to be fair, you're right, since then they've knuckled down and been excellent. But feels like there's only so many kind of blows you can sustain. But I do think, though, that in terms of certainly starting 11 that they have, and Rankin, their stock has grown, if anything, as a team and a kind of management team. It's just, well, let's face it, it's the board that is the issue at Hamilton rather than the players and the manager.
Imagine Rankin being like, right, these guys, these amateurs, are you sure we can pay them? Oh yeah, John, don't worry. Wink. No, listen, seriously, are you sure we can play these guys? Oh yeah, don't worry about it. Wink. Rankin must be absolutely livid. I'm going to imagine that he has spoken to the board, spoken to the director of football. Can we play these players? Yes. Picks them in good faith for those couple of games, and then gets told, oh, hang a second, see Michael Stone's registration. There might be a wee issue with that. You're going to have to take him out of the team. And so for this, he's done well in the sense that he'd been livid after that. He was livid after that. You could tell, I mean, it was 8 minutes that he spoke for in that interview. He must be furious just now because once again, it's the stuff that the nonsense that's going on around him up the stairs has cost us him. Relegated them last season, and it's put a big dent in their title challenge this season because now you fancy between them and Inverness the challenge for the title. You think that, well, we're 5 points ahead of them. It's not the case now. They're pretty much back to level. And, you know, my own team, Stennismuir, we're now top of the table. Well, I don't particularly feel good about it because Stennismuir have had a really, really good season so far, but we're top of the table at the expense of others. Inverness having the points reduction as punishment for their administration. Not as too concerned about that because that's the punishment that comes with it. But for Hamilton, though, it just feels it feels skeezy and sort of just devalues the league a bit.
If Stenny were to win the league by, say, a point...
I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't be complaining. Wouldn't be complaining. Shaughan, you wouldn't see me for about 8 weeks if Stennismuir won the league. You wouldn't see me for weeks. And then, yeah, maybe in week 9 I'd come back and say, no, you know something, mate. I was delighted and I celebrated very hard, but I don't approve of it. I don't approve of it. But just a real shabby state of affairs at Hamilton once again. And I look forward to another hand-wringing club statement from Jock Brown saying, we're shocked and saddened to learn of the SPFL's decision. We take no interest in this and we will be appealing vigorously. And the appeal goes nowhere. That's exactly what's going to happen. And again, something bad is coming down the tracks. It feels like Wile E. Coyote. Like you've just dodged. It's like you're at a level crossing, you've dodged one train, you turn around to smell, look back, and another train comes and hits you in the face.
I am also looking forward to Jerry Strain's next LinkedIn profile.
Yeah,
these posts. Now, I'm not on LinkedIn, but I do enjoy seeing them. Generally, in these situations, he'll put up something clearly written by AI about how good a leader he is, or what it takes to be a good leader. Well, what I would say is there's many things that make people good leaders. I would say being half decent at admin at least partly makes up some of that, and he needs to improve on that.
Now, you're looking forward to seeing his next LinkedIn post. I'm looking forward to his next appearance on Improving Scottish Football podcast.
The now deleted Improving Scottish Football podcast.
Listen, release the video, make it public again. Hamilton Academical are playing Queen of the South on Friday night. I think I might go along to that one, and that segues very nicely into our featured match in League One. That's Peterhead 3, Queen of the South 0. This is the Blue Toons' first win over Queen of the South in their history. Not like they play each other very often, right enough, but nevertheless, a red letter day all the same. Kieran Shanks opened the scoring from the penalty spot after 3 minutes. Craig McGuffey doubled their lead just before half-time. And Jordan Brown completed the scoring midway through the second half with a towering header. Peterhead motoring along very nicely. 3 consecutive wins in 5th place with 16 points. Queens, meanwhile, 7th with 13, recorded just 1 win and 4 losses in their last 5 matches. And it feels, and you might need to step in and correct me here, but it feels like any time Queen of the South are broadcast live on the BBC Alba channel, they lose.
Did they win the week before? Were they not on TV the week before and won?
They could well have done.
But I think that was their first win live on TV in something like 26 attempts. And that's going back like 15 years. Something really, really silly.
But let's be honest, Queen of the South, Peterhead were really good. Queen of the South was shit here.
Yeah, it's funny, like the first game, the championship game between Arbroath and St Johnstone, we said we were both surprised at that turn of events. It's the complete opposite for this. This feels like the exact type of game that you just expect Queen of South. And I was going to say under Murphy, but actually under numerous managers for about 4 or 5 years now. You just expect them to flop and come up short. And I kind of had it on in the background on Saturday. I think there's only the goals available, so I've watched those back. But for what I could see on Saturday night, it was 3-0 going on 4 or 5. It was a thoroughly comprehensive win for Peterhead. And what I will say about Peterhead is I wish they were a bit closer to me, because I would like to go and watch them, because I enjoy watching them. There is and I don't like this term when you apply it to a football team, a kind of honesty about them, which I don't really like, but you know what you're going to get for them. It feels like, even though they're a part-time team, even though the managers can only spend whatever it is, 5-6 hours a week with them, it feels like they're coached really well. Everybody knows what's expected of them. They'll always give 100%. Again, another kind of cliche, but there is also a smattering of quality about them as well, which I suppose similar to East Fife, for a part-time team that's come up and then at the end of last season, they don't look out of place a division up. I've enjoyed them this season.
I think they've been really good. Yeah, just unfortunate the 2 times I've seen them in the flesh, they lost on both occasions. Just any other time seen them watching the highlights and so on, and just keeping abreast of what's been going on, they have been impressive. I think that I watched the BBC Alba half-time interview with, was it Cammy Smith and Ryan Strachan? That's right, it was the pair of them. And I think that Ryan Strachan spoke, you talked about the honesty there, and he said that they kept about 14 or 15 players from last season. The squad hasn't changed too much. He said the continuity is very important for them. And I don't know if it's because we're talking about the same players from one year to the next. It's quite easy for us to identify with them. Uh-huh. You these Peterhead players, you recognise them. Like Dylan Forrest could walk past me in the street and I go, oh, there's Dylan Forrest, the Peterhead midfielder. You know, I like that about being able to recognise. That was actually one of the good things about Tuesday night at Firhill. I didn't need to look at the squad numbers. I could actually recognise the players by face, which was good fun. I could do the same with Peterhead. We know what their strengths are. We know what their weaknesses are. And there's on top of that, Jordan Brown in his post-match interview. I don't know if you notice as well, the tripod.
Weirdly shot.
It looked like he was drowning at points, and it was just because of the way the tripod was tilting up the way. No, save him, help him. But he was talking about the midfield three there, and it's a really, really solid midfield three there of Cammy Smith and Dylan Forrest and Andy McCarthy. Just really, really good midfielders. We've spoken in the past about like Alloa's midfield and how the constituent parts all work well together. You can say the same thing about Peterhead's midfield. That gives them a really good base to go and perform. Shanks looked like he had a really good game here. It looked like he was being very, very difficult for Peterhead to try and defend against. I mean, that's how the opening goal comes from. It's a ball played up to Shanks and he makes it difficult for the defence, able to hold up for McCarthy to come in, and it's a really bad tackle by Taylor Charters to concede the penalty. But they've got a lot of movement up front. Quality guy like Max Barry. A lot of when we talk about Peterhead, we always talk about how good he is on one flank. You know, the fact that they can bring in like old stagers like Niall McGinn. Niall McGinn, no idea why he was starting games for Greenock Morton last season. Very much not capable of doing that anymore. But a very useful option for Peterhead to bring off the bench in games if you're leading, who's just got that skill and got that experience that can slow things down and maybe take a wee bit longer that's necessary. All those little intangible, maybe things that we don't necessarily notice that makes a big difference. There's a lot to like about this Peterhead team, and when they came into the division, I thought they'd be fine, and I'm pleased that has been the case so far.
Yeah, so much to enjoy about Peterhead, but probably not so much when it comes to Queen of South. I thought on the night, I thought they were pretty pathetic. Like there is, like they really did offer up almost nothing. And of course, afterwards we had grinning Peter Murphy with whatever it was a 10-minute interview with Sandra, where again, maybe a slightly different interview with him actually. That was quite interesting.
Yes, I mean, there was found the interview really interesting. I mean, and for a number of ways, 10 minutes and 22 seconds, still not as longest interview that he's given. I think the one he gave against Partick Thistle was 10 minutes 53 seconds. So not quite on there, but he gives one of the things about Peter Murphy is, I think the interviews are long, but they're not. It's not his fault that they're long. He gave a really detailed answer about the level of performance and how he was unhappy about it. I mean, full of praise for Peterhead. He said they were just like more aggressive and better than them, and when they had that 3-goal lead, they were just quite happy to just sit back and Queen of the South were just having the ball but just doing nothing with it. I think Queen of the South must have seen about almost 2/3 of possession, but just didn't do anything with it. And he gives a detailed answer. He's spoken for 10 minutes, and then Sandra just asks him, "Yeah, Peterhead had quite an easy day." But that's the thing. He's just explained you're not listening to him. He's just explained what. So you're going to ask. He's basically going to answer the question again. The bit he did get rattled. There was he said that that was it. He said that's what I'm saying there. He'd spoken about 2.5 minutes, and she said, "Yeah, Peterhead certainly deserved it." And he takes a pause and sort of like, "Yes, they did," and then basically just re-answers the question. And then she said to him, "They never seemed to get out of first gear." And there's a long pause, and he's like, "Fair enough, fair enough." And it's just you don't expect to hear that from your interviewer. That's what was interesting. One, that he was really put into a position that he didn't like, but on the other hand as well, just basically he's just answered a question, you've asked him the question again. That's why the interviews are as long as they are.
I think the very first comment on YouTube about the interview was, if Sandra's turned against you, you know the game's up. It did feel like she'd turned a wee bit. I got the impression it was like, do you know someone, generally I interview you, I don't know, 10 minutes from my house. However, I've come all the way up to Peterhead. My weekend's ruined. I really have had enough of you. That was the vibe I was getting from her.
I suppose though, if you look at the goals, the first one, penalty because Taylor Charters dives in on Andy McCarthy, and Andy McCarthy doesn't need any invitation to go down. Like the second goal, Liam Smith losing the ball in the middle of the park, Cammy Smith pinching it off him and playing in Craig McGuffey, Shanks to tee up Craig McGuffey. And the third goal, it's a corner kick. Who's marking Jason? If you're looking through that Peterhead team and you're like, who are the biggest threats at corners? Jason Brown be one. Matty Douglas completely loses him. In fact, he's in the deck actually when Brown goes into header. I think that was Brown. They said it's his 300th appearance for Peterhead. So a great way to cap it with a really good win. All the goals very preventable, but Queen of the South can't prevent them.
Yeah, and it feels like Queen of the South are doing that thing that every now and again a full-time team will do in League One, where they should have an advantage because these players are training, whatever it is, 4 or 5 days a week. But everything they do is very, very slow. Like there will be 5 or 6 passes between the defence before it goes forward, probably quite aimlessly at points. But everything they do when they go forward, everything is slow. So that, what you would presume to be an advantage because they have fatter players in theory, it's never really borne out on the game because anytime they want to go forward, whoever they're playing against, find it quite easy to kind of get in and get organised and prepared to repel that attack, if that makes sense. And I find them a frustrating watch. And if I was a Queen of South fan, it would be frustrating tenfold. I can understand why their attendances are ultimately dipping over the last 4 or 5 years there. When you compare them to what they were, whatever it was, 7, 8, 9 years ago, my goodness, they are on a kind of massive downward trajectory, and nobody seems to be able to kind of pull them up by the bootstraps. Like, you know, somebody like what John McGlynn done a few times at Wraith Rovers. They've never managed to find somebody like that. But with every passing week, it feels like Murphy is maybe not going to be in situ that much longer, is the impression I get.
I think that Murphy needs to take some share of responsibility because he signed these players. I mean, when they brought Cian Leslie in from Kilmarnock on loan, I remember thinking, like, I've seen him at Clyde and at Elgin, he's fast, but I don't think he really does much beyond running straight lines. But I don't think he's quite...
I suppose in the forward positions, you can have some sympathy because Cian Leslie probably wasn't supposed to play for them. Like, he would have been the third or fourth choice. They should have had Jordan Allen, who's not played this season and is probably another, whatever he is, 4 weeks away. Curtis Guthrie has had a good season. Sounds like he's another 3 or 4 weeks away. So I think in those forward positions, maybe Cian Leslie wouldn't have been first choice.
But you've still got a guy though, Shaughan. You look at Kai Kennedy, we'd said that for him and Liam Smith, this is going to be a really big season for them because and we've praised them early in the campaign for some of their performances. I can't quite remember it was against. I think they had a really big win that we discussed. I think it was against... Might have been against Peterhead. We did, when they beat Peterhead 4-0 at the start of the season. That's exactly when it was. We praised these guys, and it just feels like this is supposed to be a big season for you if you're serious about like kicking on with your career. And these are the guys that you'd want to get on the ball and try to carry the team up the park, and it's not happening for them. And it's at the stage now with Murphy where, what are the arguments for keeping him on? I mean, they're in a terrible run of form at the moment. They're probably a bit fortunate that the other sides in the division have been hamstrung by points deductions, but they're not a side. I mean, anytime I've seen them, I've actually been quite impressed by them last season and this season. And they're quite a big side, quite difficult to break down, quite a lot of quality players in the ball. But then watching them on Saturday, when I watched back BBC Alba, I just think, this isn't good. This is just, who's enjoying this?
I mean, the fact that I'm not sure they're any better than the Marvin Bartley side. And let's face it, he was kind of lambasted for his time at the club. So the fact that they don't appear to have moved forward too much, if at all, under Murphy's tenure is quite an indictment, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're playing Hamilton Accies at Broadwood on Friday. How do you see this one going?
Before the 6-point deduction, I expected Hamilton to win this quite comfortably. I still think that'll be the case, actually. Hamilton will win 3-0.
Yeah, I think it'll be 3-0. It does feel like, again, don't like advocating for managers to move on and so on. It just feels like more and more difficult to mitigate for Peter Murphy. And I think a negative result here might speed that up. Peterhead, meanwhile, they're hosting Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Feels like Inverness have kind of went slightly off the boil recently, and I don't think they'll have an easy time of it at Peterhead. I will go for a share of spoils. Actually, I'll go for a draw. Fair play. Actually, I think as positive as we've been about Peterhead, I do think Inverness Caledonian Thistle will win that one. I think that against Kelty, I think the 2 goals they lost were quite bad goals for them to lose. So I can't see that happening again. They probably should have won that match actually on the balance of play. So one more thing before we move away from Peterhead. We don't really talk about the KDM Evolution Trophy because certainly at this stage of this newfangled competition, there's not really much to discuss. However, Peterhead on Saturday last week were beaten 4-0 by Hibernian's Kiddies team, which that in itself is unusual. What's even more unusual was that the goalkeeper, Blessing Oluyemi, was substituted at half-time. He conceded 3 goals, 2 of which were really bad, the third one in particular. And I think we've got someone to put alongside Barry John Court and our horrendous goalkeeper performances that lead directly to substitutions shelf.
It was a fact that there was clearly Peterhead fans very close to the camera who'd very much had enough with them, and they were having a bit of a meltdown at the third goal. Very, very funny. Get them off! And I suppose they got their wish.
I think it was really funny, a lot of these highlights, when you see like a slow motion replay, but they keep the slow motion, but they keep the audio, like the real time audio running underneath it, so you can see this absolute disaster unfolding in front of you in slow motion. You're, get the fuck off that pitch! You know, here's some old boys in the really thick Doric accents screaming for this guy to be taken off. Very, very funny. Very, very funny. But Shaughan, our final match, our final feature game. This is quite a lengthy podcast, but our listeners wouldn't expect anything less. This is in League 2. This is Dumbarton 1, the Spartans 2. Bradley Bevo White put the Spartans ahead with a really nice finish from the edge of the area. And although Leighton McIntosh restored parity towards the end of the first half, Mark McNulty would put the visitors back in front for good. Cammy Russell had the chance to extend the Spartans' lead, but he chose to miss a penalty midway through the second half. Dumbarton in 7th place with 10 points, just 1 win from their last 6 matches, as well as 2 draws and 3 defeats. But the Spartans still top the division. They hold a 3-point advantage over East Kilbride. Shaughan, what's your thoughts on Dumbarton 1, Spartans 2?
I do enjoy Dumbarton's new highlights package.
Yeah, very good.
It was very thorough. Last about 13, 14 minutes, whatever it was.
I think about 5 of those minutes were dedicated to like injury time at the end of the game. There was a lot of it. Listen, if you want to see perilous corner kicks, watch those match highlights.
I did enjoy when the commentators criticised all of Dumbarton's corner kicks as they were getting ready to take another corner kick that they scored from. They were like, oh, we need to change up how we take corner kicks. Then they done the exact same thing and then scored it. So that was good. But regardless, I mean, Stevie Farrell said afterwards that he felt that Dumbarton had been the better team and created the better chances. I'm not entirely sure about creating the better chances. I do think over the piece that they'd done okay. They had plenty of possession. It looked like a scrappy game. Certainly the second half. I could kind of understand where he was coming from in terms of Dumbarton having possession, and at no point did I think that Spartans were comfortable. But I still thought 2-1 was representative of, ultimately, Spartans just been a bit more incisive when they had play. I think that Dumbarton looked blunt when they went forward, I suppose.
That's right. That was my conclusions from this game as well. I think that their best chances came from set pieces, which they ultimately scored from quite a nice finish from Leighton McIntosh. But I felt as though the Spartans had their number. It felt as though the Spartans had more gears they could have gone through had the match gone against them. It didn't look like a particularly good game of football all in, but nevertheless one that the Spartans will be delighted to have taken the 3 points on, because having watched the highlights from Elgin City's defeat at East Kilbride looked really, really good. And I think that performance there with Connor Young up front for them, scored 2 really nice goals, and it looked like a really complete performance. I think that as a bit of a sidebar, but having praised East Kilbride when they beat Forfar Athletic 5-0, that's to come the caveat that Forfar were really bad that day with loads of individual mistakes. This felt as though this was all played out, and like East Kilbride were very much the better team, the best performances coming in, and so that set down a marker. So this was a game that they needed to win. But I think, am I right in saying that Dumbarton's home form has been really poor? Just one win at the Rock all season. At the end of the game, at the full-time whistle, some gentle booing for Farrell. I'm going to assume it was directed at Farrell.
I mean, it's a shame. I mean, it feels like there's a lot going right at Dumbarton this season, and it would probably shouldn't criticise them too much, because actually the start to the season has been decent. Bear in mind they started as well with a -6 points, but it just feels like, as is often the case with Dumbarton under Stevie Farrell, that they will go on a really poor run of form that might last quite a lengthy period of time. And I do wonder if that's what we are, well, not entering into now, but possibly we entered into it 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, for those who didn't listen, Shaughan and I recorded a Patreon podcast last week where we basically ranked all the League 2 managers on a scale of 1 to 5, and I think we both came to the conclusion that Farrell was perhaps one of the most difficult to try and rank, because it's quite difficult to do it on just this season alone, given that he is in, perhaps more so than any other manager, more ups and downs in his time at one club. There can't be many managers. I don't think there's any managers in the SPFL at the moment who have been relegated twice with the same club, which is certainly the case with Farrell. And certainly the consensus, going by sort of stuff you're reading in Pie and Bovril, and Dumbarton have got quite a good support there, and there's all various opinions, but the broad consensus seems to be they wouldn't mind seeing him moved on. But that's been the case for years. Like, that's been the case for years with Farrell.
I do wonder though, that I suppose what is new is the fact they have a new Canadian owner. Now I don't know what his, I know he looks after teams in Canada. I don't know how competitive the teams that he looks after there, so I don't know what his record is in terms of getting rid of underperforming managers. So whether that comes into play, I don't know, but it gives an interesting subtext, I suppose, the fact that he has a new boss. And I don't know if you remember, right at the start of the season, I think must have been a League Cup game or a Challenge Cup game, and Lapointe said that he makes notes and was passing them to the manager during the game. So I do get the impression that he is quite opinionated and is quite happy to put his own opinions forward. So I did wonder if I do wonder how long he will accept a poor run of form, which in the past maybe Farrell has got away with.
He'd certainly accept a poor run of form better than I would accept getting notes handed to me. I'd be like, blow my hooter right on them, chuck them at my feet. That's really cheeky. Yeah, it does feel just like quite a stilted performance, not doing well at home, playing for set pieces. As well, I think it's Dumbarton, I would need to check the stats. I think if they go behind, it's very rare that they come back to win in games. So there's not really much to say about it, despite the fact the highlights were excellent. Not a lot happened in them, so there's not really a lot to discuss. I suppose for the Spartans, the best moment in this entire match is Bradley White's goal, an absolutely phenomenal finish from him to win.
No, you're right. I think initially I looked at it and wondered if Shea Kelly should have done better, but only because it was straight at him and right in the middle of the goals. But he had A, it was extremely well struck, and B, it was like he had the entire pitch, all of the players on the pitch in front of him. So he probably saw it quite late. I did think he could have done better with the second goal, though, very much so.
Yeah, it's Cammy Russell is put through on goal, and he's got Mark McNulty up with him. Rather than squaring it to him, he tries to shoot, and it's blocked by the goalkeeper, but it's not blocked particularly convincingly, and the ball just rebounds to Russell, who's able to head it into McNulty's path to head it into the net for what proved to be the decisive goal there. So yeah, I think that's quite rare for Kelly. I think he's on the whole been
totally
a positive performer this season.
Yeah, totally. Good win for Spartans. Felt like a game that they had to win. Watching it though, as well as they've done, and I hope they keep up, because you don't want, well, you never want like a kind of one horse race in any division, but this very much felt like the type of game they would need to win if they are going to take a title challenge to East Kilbride, I suppose.
Yeah, and again, no post-match interview with Dougie Samuel. Very frustrating. It would be good to get his thoughts about anything, really. What's your favourite flavour of crisp, Dougie? Tell us. We'd love to know. But there has been some improvements in terms of media, because they did post some short-form video content with the players after the match. Like, definitely a step in the right direction. That's the sort of stuff we're looking for. And I suppose you compare it to Dumbarton, you get a very thorough highlights package, and you get a good, like, Fraser Clark interviewing Stevie Farrell, and that's always like listening to Stevie Farrell. He's not my manager, so I'm perhaps not as like annoyed or wound up by him. But I just like his take on things in the game. Might not necessarily always agree with him, but I always think that he backs himself with what he's saying, and there's a degree of fact, or certainly his version of fact in it.
I remember discussing him when he was a Stranraer manager, and we spoke very, very positively about him. I do think he's maybe become more. Maybe it's just because of how his tenure at Dumbarton has went. I do feel he throws in more excuses than he used to. I think he's maybe less honest than he was when he was a Stranraer manager. Regardless, so I still do enjoy listening to him.
And he did say, I've got down in my notes here, one of the things he did say that he I think one of the things was, why on earth are you playing Scott Tomlinson up front? Why not play him out wide in his natural position? But I suppose there's a good reason behind that. If I was to say to you, Shaughan, what's the Spartans' biggest weakness? You would say, sorry.
Jordan tapping.
Yeah, they're slow, but you'd say they're slow at the back. That's what I was teeing you up for that one there. Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you there. But they're slow at the back. So if you put a really fast guy up and get the ball up to him, hopefully he can dribble past Ayrton Sonker and get through and goal. It just didn't happen in that regard. I can see the thinking behind it, but it didn't work. And that leads to fans saying, oh, why was Tomlinson not playing in his natural position? So yeah, it didn't work. But nevertheless, up next, there's both in Scottish Cup second round action, Dumbarton versus Tayport.
I think it'll probably be a horrible day, but Dumbarton will win.
Yeah, I think they need to win. I think anything other than a win here. And I think Farrell have to be smuggled out via the sea. They'll have to have a boat outside the ground like Bonnie Prince Charlie and take him down. Take him down the car park. And this is a really interesting game, Shaughan, because these two teams will meet each other next week, and we'll cover it next week. They'll meet each other in the Scottish Cup, then meet each other in the league as well. Spartans versus East Kilbride.
I think this will be an absolute humdinger, but I suspect East Kilbride will have too much for them.
I say with myself. I think that getting Connor Young in, who we touched on, they have been excellent finishing. Really, really good finishing, and we know that he's capable of scoring goals against Spartans. I think Kevin Waugh is a player that he enjoyed playing against when they met each other last season at Meadowbank. Waugh couldn't handle him, eventually sent off for pulling him down, denial a goal scoring opportunity. So I think he will relish that. And it's just, when I was watching those highlights against Elgin, you thought, this is a player who has demonstrably shown after those 6 months that he is too good to be playing in League Two. And I actually wondered if he was a flash in the pan, because he'd never really suggested having done it elsewhere. Off the back that he's got 3 goals in 2 games, maybe he isn't a flash in the pan. Maybe he is actually just a very good striker who just didn't get a rub of the green at Dunfermline.
I was at the game and John Robertson did go off injured quite early, so that will be a hindrance for them. And if they didn't have Young, then I maybe would have leaned more towards Spartans. But my goodness, his brace was excellent at the weekend.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, Shaughan, that you were at K Park to watch East Kilbride 3, Elgin City 0. Shaughan and I went to brand new grounds for the first time. Shaughan was at K Park. I was at Balmoral Park for Cove Rangers against Stennismuir. And we are going to be discussing our experiences, not necessarily of the matches, but more of the day itself, the ambience, the atmosphere, the environs, the mise en scène. Eddie, that doesn't even have anything to do with going to football, but you get the general idea. We're going to be talking about experiences, and if you want to listen to that, you will need to subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. For as little as £2 per month, you can have access to hours and hours and hours of top quality content. If you want to listen, please do so, but pay us first. This is how Shaughan and I put bread on the table. I think we'll leave it at that, Shaughan.
Yeah, sounds good.
Right, we'll go and record that Patreon, but you, dear listener, enjoy your football. But unlike Greenock Morton fullback Zach Delaney falling down, cradling the ball and demanding a foul before the referee has even blown his whistle and conceding the most stonewall penalty you're ever likely to see this decade, please do so respectfully. Thank you.